What's cooking, Timberwolves? All right, new place. Most of you should recognize this space. I'm back at school, but it doesn't mean that I am not going to be filming these demos. I got to support you guys. And this week, we're going to do an upside down cake. So this recipe is awesome. It's super easy. It's delicious. For those of you guys who don't know what an upside down cake is, basically, what you're gonna do is you're gonna be putting your fruit on the bottom with a buttered sugar mixture. You're gonna be baking it with cake on top, and then when you're done, you're gonna flip it onto a plate, and basically everything that was on the bottom goes to the top. It's a really, really moist and delicious cake. The recipe that I'm gonna be providing you with you guys is pineapple upside down cake, but if you are not a fan of pineapple or if you're allergic to pineapple, you are more than welcome to do a peach upside down cake. And you can use canned peaches for that if you want, or fresh fruit. I'm gonna ask that you do not use frozen, only because we don't need the extra water that would come out after you defrosted the fruit, okay? So I'm gonna provide you guys with the recipe, and then we're gonna get going. This setup is a little bit different for me, so please, 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 if my camera skills are not great, it's because I don't have my usual cameraman. And I'm trying to make do with the space that I've got, okay? So you guys probably will be able to see the oven, but I am using our standard ovens, and we're preheating and doing all that stuff, okay? So here's the recipe. It's a little bit hard to see, isn't it? Okay, maybe I'll provide, it's like backwards. That's still really working. Okay, maybe I'll provide the recipe on the YouTube link just for those people who might not have it with Teams or whatever, just to make sure that it's there. But first and foremost, I'm gonna make sure I wash my hands, gotta stay safe, and I've got the 20 to 30 seconds. So I'm gonna walk on over here. While you're doing that, you can get out your ingredients for you guys that have already washed your hands. I've got all my stuff ready to roll. You will be using a whisk for this one. But that's about it. You don't need a hand mixer or anything like that to do this cake. And again, it's super delicious, okay? So I'm gonna wash my hands for my 20 seconds. And I'm back, which is, it's awkward. Maybe we'll do that again. Maybe I'll wash my hands prior. Maybe that's a good idea. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start off by preparing my loaf pan with my buttered sugar mixture. For this lab, I do have my 1/4 of a can of pineapple, and I wasn't able to get pineapple slices. So what I'm actually going to be doing is I am going to be slicing these tidbits. So sometimes you can get pineapple tidbits, which are like smaller pieces. And you can just slice them into small pieces to be able to go on the bottom. You don't want chunks of fruit. You do want them to be thinner. So if you can get pineapple slices, that's awesome. But if not, then you can just cut the pineapple up. Like, it really doesn't matter, okay? And then you can do different designs. So I'm just gonna do a basic, it's just gonna be out there. But you guys can do like fan designs. You can add maraschino cherries if you want to do like dots in it. You can do like a whole bunch of stuff. If you actually take a look, people who do upside down cakes like do it legit, actually do designs on the bottom. That's just really, really cool. Okay, so I'm gonna preheat my oven to 350 convect or 375 bake. Sorry. And I am going to get that set up now. And away I go. Okay, so the very first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my, I have margarine. You guys can use butter at home if you have it. This is a pre-measured amount, okay? These come in 125s. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to microwave it for 25-second intervals until it is melted, okay? So microwave. And again, depending on the type of microwave, if you've got a newer, more recent microwave, you wanna make sure that you're not going above 20 seconds because you don't want to explode all over your microwave. But I know that I've got an older one, so I can do 25-second increments. And I will take it out to see how it's melted, but I need it fully melted. The other option with this is if you are good with remembering stuff and you're responsible, which I like to believe I am, but I always forget, you can actually put your butter or your margarine into your pan, and you can actually heat up your pan in your oven with the butter or margarine, and it'll melt as your oven heats up, okay? And it's a really, really easy way to do it, and then you just add sugar to your pan or your cake pan and then mix it in, and then you don't need to dirty a dish. I have done this, but I've forgotten about the butter before, so, and that was in a different cake, but so because of that, I'm gonna stick with my microwave. But again, if some of you guys remember, it only takes about like a minute or two for it to fully melt, but please make sure that you're on it. And if you have better countertops than I do and you can put this back onto your countertop, you're fine. Again, I would have to do an oven rack and all that stuff. So for me, I'm just gonna stick with my microwave. All right, so in the meantime, I am going to grab my my pineapple and I'm gonna start slicing it. So I've got a cutting board here and I'm just going to take these tidbits and I'm gonna slice them into threes. And I do wanna make sure they're pretty uniform in size. And you don't actually need a lot of pineapples. So even if you had like, say like with those fruit cups that they sell, they're like the applesauce, but they have like fruit cups. You could probably just use one of those, drain off the liquid, and then use those chunks of stuff and you could easily bake it. So if you've got those at home, go for it so that you don't have to open up an entire can. If you do open up a can of pineapples and you don't know what else to do with it, you can make a pizza or you can make some smoothies. They're really, really good in smoothies. As far as what you can put on top of a upside down cake, again, like mangoes work really well. If you like bananas, you can do that. Again, no frozen, okay? And if you do use canned, just make sure that, again, you're draining off the liquid. You don't need extra liquid. That one's not cutting well. You don't need extra liquid in this recipe because it'll screw up your bake time. All right, I'm hoping that that'll be enough. I might do one more. So I'm slicing these up. There, perfect. So I'll put that to the side. All right, so I've got my butter, it is melted. To this, I'm going to add brown sugar. So I will be adding 50 milliliters of brown sugar. So I'm gonna take my 50 or my quarter of a cup. I'm going to pack this in to make sure I get all the brown sugar and level off. So I'm gonna put it straight into my liquid measure, which is what I use to melt my butter. And I'm gonna take my whisk and I'm gonna mix it together. Now, it looks like there's a lot of butter, and there is, but it's a cake, okay? And it's a good cake. Okay, so I will be using this whisk again, so I'm actually just gonna put it in my bowl. With this butter sugar mixture, I'm actually gonna put it straight into my loaf pan. So if you do not have a smaller loaf pan, you could definitely use a small pie plate. That works really well, or a small cake pan, okay? So I'm gonna use this and I'm just going to pour it in. You do not need to spray down your cake pan because you've got a lot of butter in here. And that'll act as a way for you to get the cake out and it won't stick to the sides. So I am gonna take my rubber spatula and I am going to scrape this out because I'm gonna need to measure my oil using this as well. Just gonna make sure my brown sugar is all the way around. Okay, so to my pan, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my pineapple slices, so again, they're thin, okay? And I'm going to place them on here, and they will be covered in butter, which is fine. But I am just gonna place them here, and this is where you could do a design. And watch for your fingers. I don't want you guys burning yourselves with the melted butter. And I'm just gonna layer it, or not layer it, but I'm just gonna place them on. And again, for me, I usually just stick with like a 3 across and then go all the way down. It works best, I find. I am also not very artistic, so I'm sure a lot of you guys out there are gonna come up with some amazing designs and completely blow me away when you make yours. All right, so I've got it all laid out. I don't know if I can, let's see if I can show you. Okay, so I've got my chunks in there. I'm all good to go. So I will be putting this off to the side. And then I'll be carrying on with the cake portion. Okay, so that's my topping. I can let it sit. It gets all buttery. The pineapple starts to start to like bake, but oh, it's so good. Okay, so to this bowl, I'm going to add my brown sugar and my oil, okay? So I'm actually gonna use my same liquid measure. And I'm gonna measure out 50 milliliters or 1/4 cup. And again, I'm gonna grab my rubber spatula and I'm just gonna make sure I get all the oil, because I do need to make sure that I've got all the liquid for this recipe. To that, I'm gonna add my brown sugar, and this time I'm gonna be using 125 of brown sugar, or 1/2 cup. If you do not have brown sugar at home, it doesn't really taste the same with white sugar. I'm so sorry, especially for the topping. So you will need brown sugar. Okay, so I'm gonna add this to my bowl. And I'm gonna use my rubber spatula to mix it together. And basically my goal is just to soak up all the oil in the sugar. Try to get out the chunks out of my whisk, okay? So it's kind of gonna look like this. To this, I am going to add my applesauce. So I'm just gonna take one of those cups. I just buy them in a pack of 6, and this is unsweetened applesauce. And if you don't have unsweetened apple, but you have another flavor of like apple blueberry or apple peach, you can totally use that. I have not used this recipe where, like, if you don't have applesauce, you can substitute oil, and I would actually stick with the applesauce just because of the consistency. I think if you replace this with oil, it would not bake through, okay? So unfortunately, you can't substitute the applesauce either. Okay, and then to that, I'm going to add my egg. I'm just gonna wipe my hands with my soapy cloth. And my vanilla. And this does call for 5 milliliters of vanilla. Which I forgot to grab my tools. So I'm just gonna pre-measure my vanilla over top of my little cup here that I was using for my egg. And I'm gonna put it in. Once I've got all of those wet items, I'm just gonna go with my whisk. I'm gonna mix them all together. And I wanna make sure it's really well mixed, okay? And I can say goodbye to my whisk now. I do not need it anymore. I will be using my rubber spatula, okay? So please do not, when you mix in your flour and your baking powder or baking soda and all that stuff, please do not use your whisk, okay? Because then you'll get it chunked up in here and then you lose half your batter. All right, to this I am going to add my dry. Now, we are adding baking soda and baking powder. Both leaveners are needed in this one. If you do not have baking soda, technically you should be able to increase your baking powder. So instead of doing 5, I would probably do about 7 or 8 milliliters. But if you have both, use both, okay? So I will be doing 5 milliliters of baking powder. And I'm just using my 2 for this, just because my 5 has already been used with my vanilla and I don't want to cross. So 2, 4, and then half of 2 is 5. And then I'm going to use my baking soda. And I tend to do my smaller items first, just to make sure that I remember to do them. I find if I do flour first, then sometimes I lose track of baking powder and baking soda. And some of you, but judging by how you guys have been in my rotation, you've done that as well. And that's just so that I know, like, flour is last, all of my other items are in. So I do need 1 milliliter of salt, so I'm just gonna take half of my 2. And this recipe does work with gluten-free flour. I tried it yesterday and it was delicious. And you could probably also use an egg substitute, and there's no milk, so you can actually make it vegan. So for flour, I am going to be doing 250. So that's 1 full cup. Oh, I've got a hole in there. Let's try that again. Okay, so I'm good to go with this. I'm gonna take my rubber spatula and I'm gonna start to mix it. Now, I said no, do not overmix, but you do need to make sure that you have mixed in all of your dry ingredients into this bowl, because you do not want chunks of baking soda or baking powder and eating it, because it's just not good, all right? And you won't really, once it goes into the pan, you won't really be able to mix stuff or really yeah. So we're getting to the most difficult part of the recipe, but it's not that bad, trust me. Okay, so I'm gonna scrape down my bowl and mix together. Now, if you feel like this is too dry, I'm okay. But if you guys feel like this is too dry, add a little bit more oil or a little bit more applesauce. But I'll show you what the consistency is going to look like. It kind of just looks like thick cake mix. That makes sense. It is not going to be smooth, okay? It is going to be a little chunky. All right, so this is what we're working with. Okay, it smells amazing though. All right, this is the hardest part. So I am going to pour this batter into my loaf pan, but I need to do it in such a way that I spread it out while I'm pouring. Okay, so I'm gonna start at the end, do a little bit, and then move it along as I go. Because if you put it all in one section, you will not be able to spread it, and then you will disrupt your fruit at the bottom. Okay, and you don't wanna do that. Also, when I put in this batter, the butter is gonna push up onto the sides. That's normal, okay? So you're gonna see liquid on the sides. And that's basically going to make it so that the cake bakes up moist, okay? And it's delicious, all right? So I'm gonna grab my bowl. I'm gonna grab my rubber spatula. I'm gonna hold it up with one hand, and I'm just going to paddle it as I go, okay? So I'm moving it along to make sure that I've got an even amount throughout, because again, moving it, like having to spread it over is going to be hard. And you want to make sure it bakes evenly. Okay. So now I'm going to gently take my rubber spatula and I'm just going to push the cake batter gently into the corners and onto the side. And again, you will have butter leaking up. That's totally normal. Okay, so I'm gonna wash my hands and then I'm gonna show you this, but for those of you guys who can see it, you can kind of see the edges. Okay, so this is what we're working with. See all this butter? It'll get baked into your cake. Okay, so I'm gonna take this and I'm going to put it into the oven. Now, when you put it into the oven, you do want to make sure that you are on either the lowest oven rack or just above that, okay? Because you don't want your cake to over brown. And that's going to be the thing that you're going to have to watch for, because a lot of times on these types of recipes, your middle will not be baked, but you will have a golden brown on top, and you have to make sure the middle of your cake is baked, okay? So my oven is ready. It's all preheated. I'm going to open it up and see how I have this second rack. That's what I'm going to put it on. And I'm going to set my timer for 25 minutes, okay? So if you see that it is browning on top and it is burning before 25 minutes is done, cover it with tin foil, okay? Because you need the full time for the inside of the cake to bake, all right? Okay, I know a lot of you guys get excited, especially when you're like, oh my gosh, cake, and this is delicious, so I get it. But you do need to make sure that it's fully cooked through, because you do not want to eat raw cake. Well, some of you would, but not in my kitchen, okay? When you take it out, you are going to take your metal spatula or toothpick to test it, okay? Usually I don't recommend this, but you do need to on this one. And you'll put it into the middle of your cake, but not all the way through, okay? Because you've still got that bottom of butter. So you're gonna put it into the middle and you're gonna go about halfway. If it comes out clean, you're good to go. If it's got any goopiness on it that does not look like the topping, you need to put it back in for a couple more minutes, okay? And that's just to make sure, again, you're not eating raw cake, okay? After you take it out of the oven, I'll come back to you. I'll show you how to flip it, all that good stuff, but it looks so good. And yeah, seriously, like this is gonna be one of those ones that you're probably gonna make a couple times, and especially in the summer, if you can use like fresh peaches or fresh strawberries, so good. Okay, so I'll see you when I take it out of the oven.